Hello, Gathering class. It's great to be with you guys for what I believe is going to be the last time. Pastor Bob and I are kicking the can around on whether we're going to do a joint class for the final one or not. But this is my final time getting to teach through Genesis with you guys solo. And it has been quite the honor this summer to be able to teach through Genesis with you guys. Pastor Bob and I have just loved every minute of it. So thank you for your kindness. You guys have reached out to us and just told us that you've enjoyed this series. And I'll tell you, I have gotten so much out of this series personally. It's been so encouraging to me to read through the patriarchs and just see their faith, but also their faithlessness, and to see how God used normal, ordinary guys, just like you, just like me, to accomplish his will. And that's really encouraging to me. I would love to hear from you guys and just hear a couple things that God's taught you through this season and this series. So if you want to shoot me an email, we'd love that. I'd love to hear kind of different takeaways you've had or things you didn't know about Genesis, 16 to 50 things. I've learned a lot, and it's been a lot of fun. So I would love to hear from you guys. But today, we're going through Genesis 44 through 46, and then next week, Pastor Bob and I will go through 47 through 50 and wrap up Genesis for the final time. And this is going to be our last time in Genesis. If we get blessed to be asked back again next summer, who knows what we'll go? Maybe Exodus, or we're just going to start marching through the Bible. I have no clue. But that said, this is kind of rounding the bend here. All right. So let me see if I can make sure this happens. Okay. I'm using a new program today. Bob turned me onto it, so I hope that it works out. Look at that. So welcome to the gathering once again. If this is your first time with us, I am not the normal teacher. Pastor Bill and Dr. Bill Epley is normally your teacher, and he's going to be going through, I believe, Ephesians once this Genesis series is over. But Dr. Epley has been a dear friend of mine for my entire life, actually. My parents got married at his home 35 years ago now. So I have known and loved Bill for quite a long time, and it's been an honor as now an adult and as a pastor to get to teach in his class. So thank you, Bill, for your kindness. Judd has always been a great class leader. He is so gracious and kind to Bob and I, and just hosts us really well. So thank you guys once again. I know I say it every week, but I mean it, and I can't say it enough. So again, just a little recap. We're going through Genesis 16 through 50, and we're looking at God's promise, faith through families. We'll get to that in a second. Again, if you need our email addresses, here's our email address page. Let me move my face so you can see. So this is who we are. Give me Neil Montgomery just walked into my office, and so if it feels like I just kind of saw something, and that's what happened. Anyways, there's our emails. If you need us, we are here for you as your pastors. All right, moving right along. So we've been going through God's promise, faith through families. And we have seen Abraham, we have seen Isaac, and now we have seen Jacob all be the patriarchs of the faith and take up the mantle of the promise of God, as he has promised his people to make them into a nation, a large people that is, as many as the stars in the sky. And it's growing. It's not, they're not huge yet. We're going to see today that as they enter Egypt, it's only 70 people. It's part of that's part of Jacob's immediate family. It's not including their servants and everyone of their entourage, but 70 people in the family. They're going to end up being thousands and millions of them soon, but right now it's small, and yet God's promise is still true and coming, that he will make them into a great nation. All right. So the first section, if you have a Bible, take it out. It's going to be Genesis 44. And the first section we're talking about is where Joseph tests his brothers. Where we left off last week is that his brothers have come to him in Egypt. Joseph has been elevated to the number 2 position in all of Egypt. He has as much authority as Pharaoh does. The only person that has any more authority than Joseph does is Pharaoh himself. And so he has been elevated beyond elevation. And we know that God's done that for him, and God has brought him that prosperity. And we'll see that as we go. But his brothers have come because there is a famine in the land. Joseph's brothers, all 11 of them, are talked to by Jacob. Now, Benjamin stays back, of course, because Jacob doesn't want Benjamin to die. He doesn't want him to get taken because Joseph's already been, in his mind, Joseph's dead. And so he doesn't want his youngest, second youngest, to die as well. And so we have 10 brothers going out to find food, and they end up in Egypt because it's told that Egypt is the only place you can get grain in the entire area. Now, they say the whole earth, and so the whole known earth is going to Egypt right now to find bread because there's a terrible, terrible famine. Well, while they get there, Joseph has some tricks for him and gives them money and all of this stuff. Anyways, go back and watch Pastor Bob's handling of it. He does a tremendous job with that. But as a recap, that's where we're at. And now Joseph is going to test his brothers. He's going to see, have they changed? Are these the same guys that left me for dead, that sold me into slavery, that were so jealous that they wanted to kill me? Or have they changed? Has God changed their heart, or are they the same guys that I knew back then? So, Joseph, it says, then he commanded the steward of his house, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, with his money for the grain. And he did as Joseph told him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys. They had gone only a short distance from the city. Now Joseph said to his steward, up, follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Is it not from this that my Lord drinks, and by this that he practices divination? You have done evil by doing this. So Joseph sets him up. He gets him ready. He knows that this is going to cause a test moment. And the silver cup goes into Benjamin's sack. They brought their youngest brother to him at Jacob's protest, and yet Benjamin now is with them, and so Joseph has his servant put his cup. And he says it's his cup that he practices divination with. There's nothing that tells us that Joseph did practice divination. This is probably him covering his identity, veiling himself to his brothers so that they wouldn't know it was him. This was something that would be commonly known in the day, that those who had authority would practice divination, and it was the certain divination that was done with liquid, wine, water. They would see the drops and all of this stuff, and it would tell them the future. It's not real. It's like fortune telling these days. But Joseph says, this is my special cup. I didn't give this to you. This was taken. So he sends his servant out to go do this, and he's going to see what happens. Well, when the servant overtook them, he spoke to them these words, and said to him, why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. They are immediately like, it's not us. Like, why would you even say this? Well, of course we didn't steal. Verse 8, behold, the money that we found in the mouths of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Whichever of your servants is found with it shall die, and we also will be with my Lord's servants. Well, these guys have every bit of confidence that they didn't steal this. They know that they didn't steal the cup. And so they say, look, search us, check it out. If someone has it, put them to death. Because they know that no one has it. They know that they didn't steal that. And they also say, well, not just put that guy to death, but we'll also be your servants. Like, that's how confident they bet the whole house on it. And they said, we ain't got it. We don't have this cup. It's not with us. Check, search. Well, the servant said, let it be as you say. He who is found with it shall be my servant, and the rest of you shall be innocent. Well, the servant takes it to a new level. He he says, you don't have to, this guy doesn't have to die. You all don't have to be my servant. But the person who did steal it, if he is found among you, I'm taking him with me. He's mine at that point. Well, it says, then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack, and he searched, beginning with the eldest, starts with Reuben, goes all the way down to the youngest, Benjamin. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. 13. Then they tore their clothes, and every man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. And this is a powerful moment here. 13 years ago, a very different scene happened. Instead of mourning the loss of their brother, they caused the loss of their brother. Instead of where they tear their clothes here, they tore Joseph's clothes 13 years ago. And so where they attacked their brother here 13 years ago, they are now mourning for Benjamin. It seems like the brothers have changed dramatically. It seems as though they care for Benjamin because their father does, and he's their brother. And so instead of tearing Benjamin's clothes and selling him out and saying, hey, we'll be innocent, you can get out of here, we're going home, Benjamin is now a servant. They know that this is not good, and they don't want Benjamin to be a servant. They want him to go home to their father Jacob. They have repented, it seems, from their previous deeds with Joseph. So they tear their clothes instead of Benjamin's. And it's deep mourning that they go into. And so they go to the city, and they're gonna reason with Joseph, even though they don't know it's Joseph yet. They're gonna reason with him and try and spare Benjamin. Verse 14. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell before him to the ground. Joseph said to them, "What deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination?" Again, there's nothing to see that Joseph did practice divination. Again, it seems as though this is him just concealing his identity. But what he's saying here to them is, why would you steal from me? Wouldn't you know that I'd find out? So he's kind of playing along with this, and he's goading them into this moment, trying to at least. And Judah said, verse 16, "What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants." They're appealing to God in this moment. They're saying, we didn't think this was true, and yet it seems as though it is, and we're trusting that what has happened is God's will. "Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also, in whose hand the cup has been found." And so, Joseph's servant said, "Look, you guys can all be innocent. I'm going to take the guilty one, though, with me. He'll be mine." Judah here is stepping up. And Judah has already taken the role of leadership, as we saw in Pastor Bob's previous teaching video. In this one, we see that Judah is now speaking for the family. And he's saying, look, I know that this debt causes us to be your servants. And Benjamin even. We're all your servants. Even though your messenger said that we could go free, this indebts us to you. But then Judah goes a step farther, and he goes, but he said, "Far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. But as for you, go up in peace to your father." Sorry. Joseph tells Judah, "Look, I'm not going to do that. You guys, I'm not imprisoning 11 of you. I'm not going to make you my servants or my slaves. Like, I'm going to take the one, and the rest of you can go. I'm not doing more than is needed here." And by the way, Joseph is setting it up one more time, and he's trying to see, will they abandon their younger brother? Will they abandon their family? He was abandoned 13 years ago. He was betrayed by his brothers. And now Joseph is giving them every excuse and reason to abandon Benjamin. He is giving them every reason and an excuse to give him over, and for them to run back to their father and say that Benjamin died or something. But we're going to see what happens, because Joseph is setting the trap to see if they're going to sell Benjamin out. Well, then Judah goes up to him and says, "Oh, my lord, Please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. Judah comes, and he is humble, and he comes prostrate before Joseph, and he says, look, you're like Pharaoh himself. This is like talking to the king. Please, can I please just talk with you for a minute? Can I please just reason with you for a moment? And I know I don't have a right to that. Please don't get mad at me, but let's just talk for a moment. He goes, verse 19, my Lord asked his servant, saying, have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. We said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. And Judah says, look, we told you about our youngest brother. We told you about our father and how he lost his youngest son all those years ago. And now his second youngest son is all that he has left. And he's the only son of his mother. Please, you asked us to bring him. You asked us to do these things. When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord, of you. We told him what you said. And when our father said, go again, buy us little food, we said, we can't go down. If our youngest brother goes with us, then we will go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since, recounting his loss of Joseph. 29. If you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in evil to Sheol. And he says to these boys, if something happens to Benjamin, if he is taken, if he doesn't come back, if he dies, if something happens to him, it's going to kill me, guys. And I will not be consoled. It will be bitter to me. And this is what Judah is in, he's recounting this story to Joseph. And as Judah is telling this story to Joseph, I can only imagine the emotions that Joseph is going through in this moment. Hearing how it affected his father, that he was lost. Hearing that Jacob has never gotten over his death. I mean, Joseph must feel a sense of love, and he must have felt relief to know that his father loves him so much, but also just this deep sadness and regret. I mean, the emotions he's feeling after 13 years of being estranged from his family. And they're saying, this brother that we had, this son that he had, that he loved, that we loved, is gone, and Benjamin has taken his place. And I just can't even imagine what that would be like for Joseph. The catharsis that he's feeling in this moment, the healing that's being done, but also the grieving that's happening in his soul is tremendous. Well, Judah continues. He goes, now therefore, as soon as I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, then, as his life is bound up in the boy's life, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant, our father, with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became a pledge of safety for the boy to my father. There's a lot of servants and your servant and all this stuff. Judah's saying, look, second we come back and Benjamin's not with us, Dad's going to die. He can't survive. He won't survive that. And more than that, Judah says, look, I made a promise to my dad. I made a promise to Jacob saying that I will put my life in place for Benjamin's. It's my life instead that is forfeit, not Benjamin's. If anything should happen, he will trade his place. He will substitute himself for Benjamin. He says, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. And Judah says, take me instead. Keep me instead. Send Benjamin back to Jacob. Send him back to your servant. Please let me stay. And I mean, this moment is so the opposite of what happened 13 years ago. 13 years ago, Joseph was found in a pit and then sold into slavery. They almost killed him. If it hadn't been for Reuben, he would have died. And here we have Judah, who's kind of the ringleader back then, who told him to sell him into slavery. He's now saying, sell me into slavery. Not my brother into slavery, but put me in slavery. Let me be the one that becomes your servant. And he is substituting himself for Benjamin. And the transformation that's taken place in Judah's heart over these 13 years through the whole episodes with his sons, through the episode with his daughter-in-law, the episode of Joseph and now Benjamin and Jake, Judah is transformed. And Judah is going to honor his father and protect his brothers. He's taking leadership of the family in this moment. And he's not the oldest, right? We should expect this to come from Reuben. Reuben was the firstborn. Because of that, all of the inheritance should be on Reuben. And that means also that the leadership should come from Reuben. And yet Judah here is stepping up. And what's fascinating to know is that if you know your church history a bit, or if you know your Bible, I should say, a bit, in a couple of chapters, we're going to get the blessings of Jacob on his sons. And Jacob's going to bless Judah and say that from him shall come kings. And we know that King David comes from Judah, that we know that Jesus comes from the line of Judah. And so this moment of Judah stepping up into authority and taking on leadership, but also taking on sacrifice and bearing a burden for others that don't deserve it. He is substituting himself. And this looks forward to how Jesus is going to substitute himself for us. But unlike Benjamin, we actually did steal the cup. Unlike Benjamin, we do deserve that slavery. Unlike Benjamin, we deserve that condemnation. And unlike Judah, Jesus ended up giving his life for us. Judah only says this, and we'll see in a moment that he gets off easy. But unlike Judah, Jesus had to go all the way, and he gave his life for us. And unlike Judah, there is a true atonement that is once and for all, that is everlasting, and we get to receive that inheritance. And so this moment looks forward thousands of years into the future and points us to Christ and us. And yet it's heightened so much more with Jesus. It's brought to this new level of beauty in Jesus. But this is what Judah's doing. This is who Judah is these days. And it's beautiful to see this atonement, to swap his life for Benjamin, this substitutionary atonement. Well, the test has been passed. Joseph's going to now reveal himself to his family and provide for them. The test of, will you sell your brother out to get off scot-free yourself? Will you sell your brother down the river so that you can be safe? Well, clearly they won't do that. They won't sell their brother out. And Joseph has to be so happy and proud and just honored and pleased with his brother's response here. Well, now we're going to see how this turns out. And like I said before, this emotion that is building in Joseph as he's feeling 13 years of catharsis, as he is emotionally just receiving the brunt of all of his abandonment, all of his betrayal issues, all of the years of waiting in prison, the years of being in slavery, the years of just silence. I mean, everything is culminating in this moment, and Joseph cannot control himself. And it says, then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, make everyone go out from me. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph is wailing Everything from 13 years is bubbling to the surface, and he cannot control himself any longer. The ruse of him hiding himself can no longer continue, and so he has to drop everything and tell them that it's him, that it is their brother Joseph, who they thought was dead. And it says, Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" I can't imagine what that must have been like, through the tears and through, heavy breathing, and he's sobbing. He goes, "I am Joseph. Is my dad still alive? I'd love to see him. Is dad still okay?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. I mean, this moment where Joseph is sobbing, the most powerful man in Egypt, right, other than Pharaoh, is before these brothers. And instead of acting as the boss, as acting like the leader, he is crumpled in on himself, and he is just emotionally wailing in this moment. They must have been just dumbstruck. And then he starts saying that he is Joseph. Is my father okay? There must have been confusion with the brothers, and there must have been, like it says, they were dismayed, because they realize, oh my goodness, our lives are in our brother's hands, and we betrayed him, and we were going to kill him. Oh no, what's going to happen to us? We're all doomed. But that's not what Joseph does. Joseph doesn't doom his brothers. Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near me, please." And they came near, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt." Think of the tears. Think of him just emotionally getting all of this out. This isn't from this moment where he's on the throne and he's just kind of berating his brothers. He's just pouring out as the youngest of these men, as the baby of the family, and he's just letting this out. He goes, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt." And now, guys, don't be distressed or even angry with yourselves because you sold me here. Whatever happened in the past, forget about it. Don't be dismayed. Don't be angry. Forgive yourself, because God sent me before you to preserve life. Guys, I know that you did this. I know that your intentions were evil, but God had a plan. He sent me all the way here so I can preserve my family, our family, but also the world around us. This is amazing, the faith that Joseph has. And he goes, "For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt." I mean, I can't even imagine this moment. And it's this moment that we've been waiting for, that we've been leading up to with Joseph. And it's just so beautiful to see that this is where we are, that Joseph is able to let his brothers know that he is here, that he is the one that was sent to save the world effectively, that he is like this Christ figure almost, that he is God's instrument to bring salvation, life to the world around him. And Joseph understands this intimately, personally. If his brothers had never even come, he still understood that Yahweh was the one that sent him here to preserve the world around him. And he goes, "Guys, don't beat yourselves up. Forgive yourselves. It's okay. God did this. I've come to terms with it. Yes, he's been crying. Yes, he's emotional." But he goes, "But it's okay. It's okay. I've come to terms with what has happened." "Hurry," he says. He says, "Guys, after all of this, hurry and go up to my father. Go to Jacob and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children and your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you. For there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have do not come to poverty. And now your eyes see, he says to them, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. I mean, he's looking at his brothers and saying, go get dad, get the whole family, get him out here. I'm providing for everybody. I've got all the wealth in literally the world. Everything you need will be taken care of. All is forgiven. I just want my family back. And he says, you finally see me. The ruse is done. You're looking at me. Joseph, believe it, guys. This isn't just some random story. This isn't some random guy that's trying to be an imposter. It's me, Joseph. And he says, you must tell my father of all my honor in Egypt and of all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and he wept. And Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. After that, his brothers talked with him. This is such a beautiful moment. I have chills literally as I speak about this and read this text, because Joseph here is radically forgiving. He is looking at his brothers and saying, you did the worst evil against me that we could possibly imagine, and yet I forgive you. And more than that, I give you everything. All that's mine is now yours. Come to Goshen. We will be a family again, and this will be the time of our lives. And he weeps with Benjamin and hugs him, falls on his neck, and they're weeping together. And then he goes to his brothers and he kisses them, and then he weeps with his brothers. All of them. The men who sold him down the river, literally, the men who sold him into slavery. He weeps with them and he kisses them. And then they talk. I can only imagine what it means after this. His brothers talked with him, and just the conversations. And how many kids do you have? What's going on? I got married. These are my two sons and all of this is going on in this moment. And he's just talking with his brothers. But he says, okay, go, get dad. Well, this report is heard in Pharaoh's house, and Pharaoh responds favorably. He says, when the report was heard in Pharaoh's house that Joseph's brothers have come, it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go back to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land. And you, Joseph, are commanded to say, do this, take wagons in the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Have no concern for your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. It's not just Joseph saying this. Now Pharaoh, the only person who could put the kibosh on this, the only person who could say, no, this is not happening, is Pharaoh. And yet Pharaoh goes even above and beyond this and says, go take everything back with you. Go grab them all, bring them here, and don't even worry about your possessions. If you have to leave stuff, that's fine, because the best of the land of Egypt is yours. Everything is yours. I mean, it's just amazing. The same way that Pharaoh graciously gave Joseph the signet ring and the coat and the authority, he's now giving graciously these blessings to Joseph's family. And after all that's happened, it just makes me so happy to read this part of the story. I'm just so invested in it. And it's just great to read the vindication that Joseph and his family get after all the sin and heartache and suffering that they went through all these years. And so Jacob's sons did this. They did exactly as they're told. It says the sons of Israel, Jacob, did so. And Joseph gave them wagons, according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each and all of them he gave a change of clothes. But to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 changes of clothes. Can you see that Joseph is blessing the youngest? He's saying, look, I love you guys. You're getting everything, but Benjamin's getting more. The youngest is going to flourish this time. We're going to provide for our youngest brother, our most vulnerable brother. Instead of selling him and killing him or just giving him the scraps, we're going to give him the best. And Joseph, just like at the banquet, gives him 5 times more. 5 changes of clothes in this moment, 300 shekels of silver. And said to his father, he sent as follows. 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and provision for his father on the journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, "Do not quarrel on the way." So they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father, Jacob. Joseph's like, guys, don't fight on the way home. Don't fight over who's going to get the most or what land, or don't fight over, don't point fingers at each other like, you were the one that wanted Joseph dead. No, you were the one that wanted it. I was fine in all of this. I just went along with you. Don't fight. It's okay. Forgive yourselves. Forgive one another. I have. Let's just go get dad. Go get your families and let's live as one. I love that line, do not quarrel on the way. I mean, they're brothers. Of course they're going to fight. And they're going to fight over a really serious issue. And yet, Joseph's protecting them. He's saying, don't do that, guys. So they went and got their father, Jacob. And they told Jacob, Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart became numb, for he did not believe them. It's been 13 years. As far as he knows, his son is dead. He is still mourning Joseph. And so they tell him this. He can't believe it. It's impossible to believe that his son that was dead is alive. It's a resurrection of sorts. And in this resurrection, Joseph becomes their savior. This is just pointing forward, right? This is pointing forward completely to Jesus and what Jesus does for us, that it's him that leaves, that has to leave heaven, leave the Father, right? He has to leave Joseph. Joseph has to leave Jacob. Jesus leaves the Father, leaves his home, comes to earth. And on earth, it says he became a slave, Paul says, right? Became a bondservant, Philippians 2. And so Jesus becomes a servant to all, just like Joseph became a servant to Potiphar in the prison, and then even Pharaoh's servant. But Jesus became even lower than that. And Jesus, as a servant, served all of us, and he was obedient to the point of even death on a cross, it says in Philippians 2. And it's in that death that he provides, right? It's in the death of Joseph, as Joseph goes down into the pit, literally, and then is sold into slavery and is kept in a prison for years and forgotten about. It's through that death motif that then he's able to rise in resurrection power. And God grants him all of the favor. And Joseph rises to the second in command of Egypt, whereas Jesus rises to be the King of Kings. Not just the right hand of the king of a nation, he becomes the King of all kings, the King of the universe. I mean, the stories here are paralleling beautifully, and this death, dead things don't come back to life, and Jacob knows this. He knows that his son is dead, and so to hear that Joseph has come back, it's impossible, and yet with God, nothing is impossible. And Jesus rises from the dead to forgive us our sins and save us, right? Some of you might look and say, this is basic, Ryan. Like, it's the gospel. I get that. I already know that. Like, where's the deeper theology here? This is the deep theology. This is the deep things of God, that God uses death and resurrection to save his people. And we are the beneficiaries of that perfect resurrection that Jesus had. There is nothing deeper than that. There is nothing beyond the gospel of Jesus Christ. There's nothing more wise in the gospel, or even foolish in the gospel in the eyes of the world, right? This is everything. And we're seeing it played out in Genesis, the very beginning of all things. It starts with creation and fall, and now we're getting to redemption, all the way up to now being given everything in Egypt. And we're going to see that story time and again throughout the whole Bible. The Bible is a story of creation, fall, redemption, and glorification. It's the salvation message, right? The Bible is all about God's revelation of himself, and God is a God of redemption. He's a God that forgives and blesses. He's a God that judges. He is a God that is a God of the gospel. And so the Bible's redemption history, and here we are seeing a glimpse of redemption history that points forward to the true redemption of humanity. But in this moment, Jacob can't believe it. He can't believe what he's hearing because dead things don't come back. His son has been dead because he did not believe them. His heart became numb. But they kept telling him, they kept showing him, look, I promise it's Joseph. Look at what he sent us. Look at all of this. It says, verse 27, but when they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Even Jacob is resurrected, right, in a sense. That this numbness, this death that he has felt for 13 years, this grief, it's revived in him. He feels life again. It says it revived, and Israel said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. He knows that he's close to death, and he knows that he now gets to see Joseph. He's not going to die in grief. He's going to die in blessing. He's going to die in the arms of God, in the arms of his son. And everything is reversed here for Jacob. Everything is reversed. And he gets to see his son again. And it's the most beautiful thing. And so Israel moves to Goshen. Chapter 46, 1 through 27. Israel, Jacob, is going to get up with all of his stuff and move to Goshen. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba. And I love this. He doesn't just go directly to Egypt. He doesn't just hop on the superhighway and say, let's just go. Let's not sleep. Let's just make it to Egypt. Instead, he does something fascinating. On his way down to Egypt, he comes to Beersheba. And at Beersheba, God is met with the patriarchs time and again. There's altars there that they have made to Yahweh. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob have all been right there. And Jacob's been there before, even, and spoken with God. And so he comes here and he worships. He worships. After 13 years of not seeing his son, instead of rushing there, he says, I need to give all the glory to God. God has been faithful. Yes, Jacob says his days have been short and evil, and yet also he knows that God is the one that provides for him. And so he stops at Beersheba. And it says he offered sacrifices to God, to the God of his father, Isaac. He worships God in this moment. And God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night. By the way, before we keep going, I was just thinking as I was about to go on. Are there things in our lives that it's clear that God has done it? It's clear that God has provided for us in some way, shape, or form, and yet we don't thank him first. We might thank him later. He might be an afterthought to worship God for the provision. What are those things in your life that you need to stop right now? Pause this video even and just thank the Lord. Worship him for the fact that you're alive in the midst of a pandemic. That's worth worshiping. What else? What else is there? There's so much. My wife and I we're really encouraged right now. We have some good news from our doctors about fertility stuff. We're not pregnant yet, but we think that in the next month we're going to be. And so please pray. But instead of just singing the doctor's praises, I'm singing God's praises. He's been so faithful in these 2 years to lead us and love us well. And so God deserves all the glory. I'm not going to just go immediately and tell the world about this and praise the doctors. No, I'm going to go immediately to God. And he's taught me that through this Genesis study. And so I really hope that you can just take a moment, pause the video if you need to, and just worship the Lord and thank him for all that he has done. All right. That was a freebie. That one was in the moment. All right. So God comes to him. It said, God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. And then God said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will bring you up again, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. Joseph in this moment had to have been thinking, this is the land of my inheritance. My father Isaac didn't want me to leave. Abraham told all of us this is where we're supposed to live. I'm not supposed to leave this land, and yet I feel like God's leading me to, and so I'm gonna pray and worship him and then go in faith. And God says, it's okay, you can go. I am leading you there. I'll bring you back, but I'm leading you to Egypt. So God first gives Jacob peace about the move. Second, God promises to bring them out of Egypt. This is Exodus right here. God promises the Exodus narrative right here in this moment. God's going to remember this promise to his people. He's going to bring them up out of Egypt through his servant Moses, generations and generations from now. But God is saying, for now, trust me. I'm taking you to Egypt so you can flourish. And Joseph's going to lay your head down into the earth. The peace that Jacob must have felt in this moment as God speaks with him. He wrestled with God for so long. His name is Israel, one who wrestles with God. And yet here he is completely in God's hands. He's worshiping God and he's trusting God and he's walking with God. It's beautiful. I love how God even says, look, I'm not just in the land of Canaan. I'm not just going to send you guys out and I'll come back later. He's saying, no, I'm going to go with you to Egypt. I am there with you. You can trust me. It's beautiful. And that's what he promises us, the church, by the way, that he will never leave us nor forsake us, Jesus said. We have the Spirit with us. And so even when we go into foreign lands, even when we go into places that we don't understand, whether it's situations in our lives, fears that we have, global pandemics, riots, like elections, all of this that's happening right now, we know that God is with us and that he will bring us up out of the land eventually. That redemption is still happening. Yes, we're saved for eternity, but there's even a farther step of redemption that will happen, which is Jesus coming back to consummate all that he's already done. And so we can promise and we can bank on that promise that God has given us to bring us up out of this land. All right. Then Jacob set out from Beersheba. The sons of Israel carried Jacob, their father, their little ones and their wives in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. He can't even walk this way. He's so old at this point. He is just by faith traveling. It must have been so difficult on Jacob's bones and his bad leg, right? His hip that got touched many, many years ago when he was able to wrestle. That must have been killing him on this trip. But they take their dad and their wives and their little ones in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry them. They also took their livestock and their goods, which they had gained in the land of Canaan, and came to Egypt. Jacob and all his offspring with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, all his offspring he brought with him to Egypt. He listened, and he brought everybody. Now these are the names of the descendants of Jacob. And here we're just going to get an accounting of all that Jacob brings with him. And this is kind of closing out that Toledot, right? Closing out that marker of the generations of Israel. We're going to get the prayers, the blessings that he gives his sons. But this is the moment where it says this completeness of the family is done. That God's promise to Jacob is fulfilled. So it says, the names of the descendants of Israel who came into Egypt, Jacob and his sons. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and the sons of Reuben, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the sons of a Canaanite woman. There's a lot in here that we could talk about, but we don't have time. But I recommend looking these guys up, looking up what this means, because there's a lot in here. But it says the sons of Levi then, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And the sons of Judah, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But remember, it says and Onan died in the land of Canaan because of their sin. And the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Puvah, Yob, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered, Elon, and Jalil. These are the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padan Aram, together with his daughter Dinah. Altogether, his sons and daughters number 33. Leah, the one that Jacob did not favor, the wife that he did not want but was tricked into having, is the one that is most blessed. And she has the most sons. We have the firstborn, Reuben. We have Judah, the kingly line, and we have Levi, the priestly line, all coming from Leah, all coming from this one woman that Jacob didn't even want. And yet we see God's provision in this and how God uses everything. And there's 33 of them, complete. The sons of Gad, Ziphion, Haggai, Shuni, Esbon, Uri, Arodi, and Areli. The sons of Asher, Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, Beriah, with Sarah, their sister. And the sons of Beriah, Heber and Malchiel. I think it's like Michael, but Malchiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter. And these she bore to Jacob, 16 persons. And so if we're looking at Leah as both Leah and Zilpah, she has by far the majority of Jacob's sons and daughters and grandkids. It is through Leah that so much of the biblical narrative and promise comes. And yet it's also through Rachel that this redemption has come. And so God takes care of both women and their and Bilhah and Zilpah. It's just amazing to see how God has worked all of this out for his good. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife. It's the only time it says his wife, even though Leah and Zilpah and Bilhah are described as his wives earlier in Genesis. Here, it is only Rachel that's described as his wife, because it's the wife that he loved, the wife that he desired. And it's Rachel that gave him Joseph and Benjamin, two youngest, right? Benjamin is truly the youngest, but Joseph, at the time when he was taken, was the youngest. But yeah, we have Joseph and Benjamin. And to Joseph in the land of Egypt, after he was taken there, and he'd been given power, he has kids, Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, not Potiphar, the priest of On, bore to him. So he marries an Egyptian woman, has two kids, Manasseh and Ephraim. And the sons of Benjamin, Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Echi, Rosh, Mupim, Hufim, and Ard. It's a lot of kids. Benjamin's really blessed, as we see here. These are the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. Less than even Zilpah. The grandkids and the kids are less than Zilpah has, which is a secondary concubine. It's just fascinating to see. All right, now we're going to talk about Bilhah. The sons of Dan, Hushim. The sons of Naphtali, Jazil, Gunin, Jezer, and Shilem. These are the sons of Bilhah who Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob, 7 persons in all. So that's 21 people for Rachel and Bilhah. 21 versus the over, 40? I think it's like 45 kids in people total on Leah and Bilhah's, a lot of names on Leah and Zilpah's side. It's amazing. Here's the summary. All the persons belonging to Jacob who came into Egypt, who were his own descendants, not including Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. Really quick. 66. This is an incomplete number, right? 6. God created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th. That 6-day period was good, but it was incomplete until God rested. So that's why we see the number 6 as being incomplete, but 7 as being complete and whole. 3 is a complete number, a blessed number. At the Trinity, God is 3 in 1. We see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. 3. The 33 children that were from Leah. She was blessed. So we have all these numbers that mean things. It's not about numerology. It's not about getting weird with things and counting all of this and knowing the future. There's significance to these numbers. And here we see that the people that Jacob is bringing to Egypt is 66. The family wasn't complete. They were disjointed because they weren't with Joseph. It shows that there was something missing deeply with the family before they come to Egypt. 66 persons. But here it goes and says, and the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2. So you have Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph and his wife. So that means that all the persons of the house of Jacob who came into Egypt were 70. And I think that's a sign. That's Moses here, the writer of Genesis, wants us to see that as they all come to Egypt, it is whole. This is God's plan. This is what was supposed to happen. God desired this to happen, and he orchestrated it. And all of this is that Jacob, through Isaac, through Abraham, through the promise of God, has been blessed with this family of 70 persons. Well, last section, and then we'll close. It says Jacob is united with Joseph, and Joseph preps his brothers. Verse 28, he had sent Judah ahead of him. So Jacob sends Judah, the leader, ahead of him to Joseph to show the way before him in Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen, which, by the way, Goshen was right next to Egypt. It was outside. It's kind of like a suburb of Egypt almost. It was greener, much more pasture land. And Joseph knows this. He knows that it's where they could actually have space to tend their sheep and their flocks versus be, carpenters and brick, builders and all of this. They're shepherds, and so Goshen's perfect. It says, then Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet Israel, his father, in Goshen. He presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. That reunion must have been so, so sweet for both of these men. Jacob was ripped from the hands of his father when he was a boy at 17 years old, 13 years prior to this. And he has been estranged from his family. The only consistent thing that he had in his life was God, honestly, and God's blessing, and also loneliness a lot of the time. I mean, Joseph's lived a tough life these past 13 years. A lot of blessing, but also a lot of downs. And yet here he has his father now, finally, the completion of everything that he's worked for, that God has given him. And Jacob, think of how he must feel. He's nearing death. He knows he is. He's old, and yet he gets to see his son. He gets to see that God protected his son and had a plan for his son, and that all of this heartache was not wasted, and that God used every ounce of it. Well, after they weep together, Israel says to Joseph, now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive. He's not asking to be, euthanized or anything like that. This isn't a dark moment. This is actually a sweet moment where he says, I can die happy now. Everything in my life is complete. I can die happy because my son is alive and I've seen him face to face. Well, Joseph now prepares the way for Goshen. Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and will say to him, my brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. When Pharaoh calls you, so he's telling his brothers, this is what I'm going to say. And so then Pharaoh's going to talk with you guys. So let's keep our story straight and make sure that we all say the same thing so that we can actually get the land of Goshen. Joseph's become a master politician in this time. He understands Pharaoh. He's not manipulating Pharaoh, but he's getting what God has for him in this moment. And so he tells him, when Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? You shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers. And he's say this, guys, come on, say this, in order that you may dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. Egyptians didn't like shepherds. They weren't shepherds. They were tradesmen. And Goshen was just far enough away that they would be given the land and left alone. And they would be allowed to just flourish in the land of Goshen. Well, Pastor Bob's going to pick it up right there in chapter 47, where Pharaoh's going to give them the land of Goshen, and they're going to see Jacob bless his sons, and then close out Genesis. So let's recap briefly. Recap of Genesis 44 through 46. We saw that Joseph tested his brothers to see if they had changed, and they had changed. Would they give up their youngest brother? Would they, forsake him so that they could get off scot-free? Not anymore. No longer. They were there for their youngest, and they had changed and repented. So finding that they had changed, Joseph reveals himself to his brothers and gives God the glory. He goes, I don't need you guys to grovel. I don't need you guys to apologize. God had all this under control, and so I'm not even mad. Let's just reunite. So he tells his brothers to bring the whole family to Goshen, and Jacob and Joseph are reunited at last, and Joseph is providing abundantly for his family. And that's Genesis 44 through 46. Before we close, though, I just want to say a big thank you. This has been just such an honor for me to be able to teach. Let me make sure I can do this. It's been an honor, though, for me to be able to be with you guys this summer, and to teach, and to be able to just go through Genesis with you. You guys have been just a great class. You are a great class. I'm sad I couldn't be here with you guys in person, and I hope that if we're asked back next summer, that we can be in person once again, that we can have a vaccine out here and we can all gather safely. But thank you. I love you all. If there's anything you need, please let me know. Pastor Bob and I are always here for you guys, but you have been awesome. I might see you again next week, might not. Bob and I are still trying to figure out what to do. But this is my last solo teaching, so I'm signing off. I love you guys, and next week, Pastor Bob is going to cover Jacob's blessing. So with all of that, let me pray and bless you guys as you go. Jesus, we love you. We thank you that even back in Genesis, the story of redemption was being written, that you had a plan for your people, and that your plan's always the same, which is to rescue them from evil, to use death, to use suffering in order to bring about redemption and resurrection. And so, God, we cling to the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and we cling to the knowledge that we will be resurrected, that eternal life awaits us because of what Jesus has done. Thank you for the story of Joseph. Thank you for caring for him and his faith. Thank you for all that you have provided for us for thousands of years as your people. We worship you, God, like Jacob did at Beersheba. We give you all the glory, as Joseph did to his brothers. And we thank you for everything that you have given us. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. All right, guys, I love you, and I'll see you soon.